Hi, this is Robert Clinkenbeard and David Anderson with the Commercial Landscaper Podcast. We're going to take 20 minutes of your life to deliver some amazing content from accomplished leaders and business owners to provide you some value, to help you scale your business, to become a better father, and push yourself to higher goals personally. We hope you really enjoy these shows, and we really encourage you to share this with your friends and network to help share these messages. I'm super excited to announce a new partnership we have with Site Recon. If you're tired of measuring properties, the Site Recon platform fully automates the measurements so you can then focus on sales. Think measurements, think Site Recon. This is Robert Clinkenbeard with the Commercial Landscapers Podcast. I am super excited to be joined today by Michael Synk. Michael, we've known each other for, I would say, probably about 3 years now, 2.5, 3 years.
I think 3 or 4 years, yeah.
Yeah, and I've definitely really value our friendship, your mentorship, and I'm really excited that you could take the time to be on my show today. So thank you, Michael.
Well, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Cool. So, Michael, tell me a little bit, you're obviously a fellow coach as part of the Gravitas organization. So tell me a little bit more just about your background, your achievements over the years, just to give people a perspective who you are.
Yeah. I've been a strategy coach now for about 20 years. And before that, I was in the business world as an executive for mostly in the temporary help industry for about 20 years. And before that, I was a high school teacher for 2 years. And the connection between that and coaching is that I'm a teacher. It's a natural thing for me to do to help make something easier to understand. And I can't help myself. And then the other important thing is my long-term goal is to become a tennis pro.
Nice. I like that.
Who knows if I'll ever get there, but that's what I want. You got to have big goals.
You do, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm gonna jump into the teacher part here shortly. But again, you helped me with my mentorship going into become a coach, and I definitely value that. But when you go into a company, whether it's a small $3-4 million company or something 10, 15, 20 million plus, what are some of the typical challenges that you see when you first peel back all the layers and start asking all your typical questions?
Yeah. The thing I'm trying to do when I meet a new client is I want to try to identify, and I think this is what kind of brings them to my attention or to another coach's attention or the need for coaching, is that something has changed in their business and they don't have their finger on what that change is. Something's changed. The change might actually come from them. It's growth induced. They've been growing so fast and the way they've been doing things isn't going to work anymore because it's gotten so much more complex. Then again, the change might be market driven. Okay, the demand is going up or down or shifting, the technology, all this stuff is shifting, but the complexity is ultimately something's changed and the complexity has changed and they're struggling with dealing that, and that can present itself everywhere in the business or anywhere. And because of the complexity, it kind of works like this. They don't have the context they had for success is not as relevant as it used to be. Something's changed because they don't have context. Their team can't agree on the way forward. They can't agree on the way forward. They can't get alignment on what to do. And then their actions go back and forth or become cross-purpose to each other, and they start getting poor results. And that could be they need to dig in and re-understand what their customer is buying for, how to deploy the technology they use, all kinds of things. It can be all over the map. Their strengths are no longer relevant. Okay, so it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is, but the thing that I think is in common is something changed. They can't figure out how to address it. They've got to learn something fast to get to it. Does that make sense? You're on mute.
So they're almost feeling some pain, and with that pain, they're almost like spinning their wheels here. They're not really getting any type of grip.
And the pain produces uncertainty. a lack of confidence. They're feeling like they're missing something, and they're really smart people. So this is incredibly frustrating that they're not getting it all of a sudden.
Right.
And it's common, and it's for a variety of reasons, but it's all of a sudden confidence and certainty about the future isn't like it used to be. And they start questioning their decisions, and that's really all the problems seem to relate to that.
And how quickly, I mean, you obviously go through your series of questions and just start doing your due diligence there. But I mean, how quickly can you really identifying what that key issue is, or that key roadblock, or what's that big stuck?
It's a lengthy conversation. It kind of goes like this. You're spending a whole lot of time getting at what they think the problem is, and what they think the problem is actually a symptom of something else. So you're digging deeper and deeper and deeper until you notice the aha. So it's a lot of questions. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. And I'll have a meeting planned for an hour, and we're going through this and going through it, and it might be 2 hours before we actually figure it out. I need the client to tell me with certainty, this is what I need to attack. But they usually have this superficial understanding. They think this is one thing is a problem, and that is a symptom. And, you rip the Band-Aid off of the symptom, and you haven't, or you put a Band-Aid on it. I said it backwards. You put a Band-Aid on it, and it doesn't solve the problem. It continues.
Right.
So it's a dig, I've had a series of conversations. We can't get it done in an hour. We need to get to the next part. We got here. And it's listening. Tell me about that. How does that present? And I'm trying to broaden their picture of all the things that might be in play in causing that symptom to occur, not just the obvious ones.
Right. So, you've had that, deep discussion, or several discussions. Finally, there's that light bulb moment for you, for the CEO of the company, and he or she will turn around to you and say, yeah, Michael, we'd love to bring you on to help us work through this. What even though there's that realization what the issue is, what are some of the challenges that would prevent them from actually often go down that difficult path of coming up with the solutions to break through those barriers to get to the next level?
Well, I think it comes from, it's something none of us like to want to face. No, how many people like to admit that things aren't going well?
Very few, especially owners.
No one likes that. Okay.
Especially owners, yeah.
Owners, I have not ever encountered a CEO or owner that isn't really smart and isn't really talented, okay? They're really, really smart, sharp guys. And this has been reinforced one way or another, whether they're an entrepreneur or a hired CEO. It's been reinforced that they're smart and talented and they got all the answers. And now they're having to admit, I don't have the answer. I don't know something and I don't know what to do about it. That's a big admission for someone to make, and they've got to get to that point to be able to coach them. Listen, when you're in that mindset, or you've been brought up and reinforced that I'm talented, I'm smart, I can solve anything. If I just work harder and think a little better, I'm going to get it. I'm going to read this book and I'm going to get it, or whatever. That makes listening really hard. And it's about being vulnerable. To really listen, you have to be vulnerable, and it's got to be an environment where if you say, I don't know something, or you get something wrong, you're not going to get hammered.
Right.
And that environment may not even exist at their work because they've been working like I'm solving everything. And they're not being vulnerable and everything's going well. And now it isn't going well. And it's like they can't get out of their own way. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but the listening is hard. They have to learn to listen. They have to be vulnerable and be able to say, I don't exactly know what to do. And not just to me, okay? They have to say that to me, but they have to say it to their teammates.
Right.
And that can be, that's a big shift in that, I'm sure you're familiar with Jim Collins and this idea, level 5 leadership, and looking in the mirror when there's a mistake and looking through the window to give credit to others.
Yep.
Okay. Well, until you that's being very vulnerable. You got to look at yourself, and what people have is that's flipped around. They're looking through the window to find all the mistakes everyone else is doing, and they're looking in the mirror when everything's successful. I'm the reason I'm successful.
Right.
I did this. I solved this. I solved that. And mistakes, they're looking at the window. You did that. You did that. You did that. You did that. And the listening thing becomes a huge problem.
So does that then, is that the main reason why you see you not being successful and helping them? If you come across an owner who's not willing to look in the mirror, not necessarily willing to listen and be vulnerable, then I assume it's tougher for you then to use your skills and your coaching techniques if somebody's not willing to open up.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I think that's accurate. I know that with every new client, at some point in the first year, we're going to have that 5 dysfunctions of a team conversation, and we're going to have to get the whole team to be vulnerable with each other. It just happens. It might not happen right away. They may not be able to get to that, but we can get them starting to listen to each other by working them through. Usually it's a strategic planning process, or adding to the obvious things that they already have in their strategic plan that could need to be brushed up, or the changes said that part's not relevant anymore.
Right.
But that dysfunction part, you eventually have to get there, because as growth gets more and more complex, you've got to rely on more and more people.
Yeah.
And what drives the complexity is the number of people.
Yeah.
And that means you've got to listen more, and then use your intelligence to guide them and sort through what you're hearing. All this listening, they've got to turn that around to that mirror and window thing around, so that all these things they're hearing that might be mistakes, or I don't even want to say they're mistakes. I want to say they're incorrectness, because it may not be a mistake. They just don't have full information.
Right.
They're not looking at the right stuff. And so on. And every one of those moments of incorrectness is a gift. And when the owner or CEO realizes that, when someone brings that up and it's a gift, we can do just about anything. And it's like the people in the company need to be able to say, I didn't get this, or I got this wrong, or I don't understand. And the answer is, thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Yeah.
Wow. Let's talk through this.
Yeah.
What's working, what's not working, what's not, what do you need? Because the person probably knows more about how to solve whatever the incorrectness is than the owner.
No, so true. And there must be some scenarios, Michael, where you've come into a company, the owner quickly takes almost like somewhat of a back seat and said, "Oh yeah, you can work with the leadership team," but then you quickly uncover that the leadership team has maybe been promoted into their positions, but not ever really been given any true training or leadership development. And that must be pretty challenging as well, because here you're trying to create that alignment within the company.
Yeah, and they
trying to figure out their way within the company.
And you've got to see if they can make that flip with the window and the mirror. Then they start realizing, my job is to make everyone better, not do everything and tell them how to do it. When they can make that flip, then you can improve the people, and then that can become the focus, and then the person can become incredibly enlightening to everyone else and motivated, because he's seeing people improve. And there are tough decisions in it. Some people can't improve. They need to be in a different position where they can do well. And that might even not be at your company. But it's that listening thing it's about others doing the work. I really think I'm working on developing a leadership training class. And the underlying message in the open module is, leadership is not about you. You are leading others. Others are following you.
Right.
So you have to understand and listen to the others. It's unnatural. The natural, easy thing to do is to tell them what to do, or do it for them, because you've been told you're smart and you know how to solve everything. So it's just perfectly natural to do it yourself. And that, in fact, is to the detriment of your company, because the other people don't develop.
No, that's so true. So true. Talk to me about, you've obviously, again, touching on your teaching role and, what you're spending a lot of time doing these days. I mean, what led you to that decision to write a book?
Well, I wrote rock and sand. And, I have a previous book, but rock and sand is the one that seems to have been most impactful for people. I was very frustrated with explaining what rocks were in the traditional Rockefeller Habits scaling up method. I certainly understood it, but I could not convey it very successfully to others. And my clients let me know that. So I had to have my humbling moment because I think I know how to teach very well.
Yeah.
And I can explain things well. So I turned it around and listened to them and said, please, let's draw a ton of pictures. And we finally came up with this picture of rock and sand and the idea that every business has sand and most businesses do it very, very well, or they wouldn't be in business. Okay. All the transactional nature of your business, that's what I call sand. If you don't do it, you don't get to invoice. If you don't get to invoice, you don't get to collect money. And it's about making money. All businesses really are, and doing good in the world, but you want to make money at it. And if you run out of money, you're out of business, right? But rocks are the things you need to do to improve your ability to deal with the sand or increase the amount of sand or get more money for each transaction. And I realized in listening to these owners who were coaching me that this idea of rock and sand and having to work on both at once was a moment of tension and friction that just about every CEO or owner faces. And they all, when you explain rock and sand and you got to work on both, what comes up is usually, I don't have any rocks. That's why we're not growing. And then the next question is, how do I pick my rocks? Because it's not obvious.
Right.
And a rock is a project that improves your ability to grow.
Right.
And a bunch of people need to work on it. It's not a simple one thing to do.
Right. Right.
So that happens, and it's like, well, how do we pick? And then the other thing is there's like 100 things we could do to improve the business. What's right? So it gets back to the context thing I said earlier. I was like, okay, rock and sand, that makes sense, but I got to help people understand how to pick the rocks. There's 100 there. There's maybe 5 you need to do and maybe 3 this year. Okay. How do you pick them? That's not easy. And something could be very urgent, but you're not ready to do it. So you've got to have context, which means the whole rock and sand model is you've got a context. You've got to find your cores, core purpose, core values, who's your core customer, why they really are buying, and giving a brand promise that matches that. And then what are your strengths? And then from there, you can project out 10 years, 3 years, next 90 days. And then how do you talk about it? And the real challenge is when a sand item comes up, like a new customer with a new order, we all know exactly what to do, right? Serve the customer. And everyone automatically goes and serves the customer. And they're supposed to serve the customer because you don't serve the customer, they won't come back or they won't order more. But that pushes the rocks to the back. The urgency of all the sand in real time pushes the rocks aside or to the back, and they forget to get to them. So it becomes an execution thing. And how do you make sure the rocks are getting attention? And that gets into meeting rhythm, which is kind of the last part of the rock and sand model. And if this sounds very familiar to Rockefeller Habits and the one-page plan, it absolutely should. But it's a simpler way of understanding what I need to put in place to make these decisions. To me, the rock and sand model is a sorting process. Let's sort out everything that's going good in your business, everything you know about people in your business, about your customers. And once we've got that sorted out, now we can decide what to do. Yep. And I can't sort it all out. I help the people sort it out. I make it easier for them to sort it out. That's what my coaching is about, is teaching the concepts that help them sort it out so that they can sort it out. If they don't sort it out, then they can't commit to the solution. Yeah. And it's about them.
No, and I think
how does that?
And what I think struck me was when I first started to read your book and see the diagram was just, when you compare it to, the Rockefeller Habits or the one-page strategic plan, is, when you look at your concept, and I'm looking at that drawing behind you, it's just such an easy visual that people just seem to get very quickly. Whereas, when you start reading some of these other books, it's just...
it's an overwhelm.
Yeah, overwhelm people, and people really struggle with it. But, when you quickly draw that diagram, literally people can get it within 5-10 minutes max.
They get the idea of what they got to sort out.
Yeah,
it takes sense. A long time.
Yeah.
But they buy into whatever I'm coaching them through if they understand this first.
Yep, I agree.
The business is separated into rocks and sand, and you got to work on both. If you don't have rocks, you don't have a strategic plan.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, I got to get a rock. Well, how do I do that? Oh, Mike shows us how.
Right.
The rock and sand model explains how to do it. And not that any of that is easy. It's very hard to do all of that. But now it's easy to understand what you got to put in place to get back on track with growth. That's what I think that's what I bring in my teaching background. And sometimes it hurts me because I work myself out of a job with a client sometimes because I've taught them so well and they've got it figured out and they're following this model and they know what to do. And there's not much more for me to coach them on.
Good for them, bad for you.
Yeah.
And that's probably why you have jumped into your online courses. But before I jump there, I mean, what would be, people were to talk to you or read your book. I mean, what would be the three big nuggets that you feel as though, if people or even people going to go down the path of, hey, I'm just spinning my wheels. Something's happened in my business. I'm not getting anywhere. I need some type of an outside help, wherever that comes from. What would be the three biggest nuggets that you could share to allow people to go down that path?
One thing that usually happens, I would say just about every client I've ever helped does not think they understand their customer as well as they really do. Okay, their understanding of a core customer is a demographic thing. They're so big, they're using certain things that I sell, and they're in certain parts of the world, and maybe they make so much money or have so many employees, and they think of the customer as a company, and it's really a person with recognizable habits and challenges that are actually driving their buying decision rather than how good your stuff is. I don't know how many times I've said to clients, your brand promise is about how good you are. Now, please understand, I think you're really good, and you should be really proud of what you created and what you're selling and providing to clients. But I hate to be the first one to tell you this, your customer does not care about that. They care about the problem that it solves for them, and you've got to talk to them about that. You've got to understand their problem, and the problems they have might not have much to do with your product, actually. So many times the decision to buy your product is just one part of that person's responsibility, a very small part. But if you in delivering that product, it helps them with other things on their plate, you've got a great brand promise. And that's the one thing. I think in core purpose, I think people underestimate the why part of a core purpose. They understand what they do and who they do it for, and they know how well they need to do it, but their staff they don't define why this is important to the world, actually, so that their employees can get behind it. Okay, there's got to be a bigger purpose to the business other than just make money, and they don't spend time defining that. And then maybe the third thing is, and lately I've had this experience, they go about projecting 3 years out in an incremental way. Okay, they say, this is what we did this year. Next year we'll do this. Now let's multiply that again. And that'll be 2 years out. And then we'll multiply that again. And it'll be 3 years out. And that's logical and it makes sense. But that's just a simple math problem. And what I think they have to do is go to what Shannon Susko calls widgets, the actual units of business that you sell to your clients, and count out how many can we sell next year if we're successful at our cores. And then how many more can we sell the next year? And what else can we sell the third year? What does that add up to? And then are there other widgets we can start adding into the mix and start counting how many of those we think you can sell? I'm finding that the frontline people who actually make the product or sell the product really do know how many they can sell. And they're generally a little bit more optimistic than the CEO. And they can confidently say, we're going to sell this many, and they can visualize that. And to me, the way you go about that is you work the widgets 2-3 years out, and then do the math upwards.
Right.
What people, in my original comment, what they do is they set incremental goals that delivers the kind of money they need to make as a company to keep going or they want to make. And then they backfill into What do I got to sell to get there? To me, that's backwards. And it took me a while to learn that. I didn't learn that until about 3 years ago. But that seems to be the common thing. The whole team will be more committed if they build the numbers from the products and services they deliver, which they truly understand what it takes to do that, and then do the math upwards to what the revenue, gross profit,
that makes sense,
and net profit will be. And then you let the math experts in the company work it back to 2 years, 1 year, 90 days.
Right.
And everyone's committed because they've built how many widgets they have to sell. And I think the front line and the middle managers really might know this a lot better than the CEO. And those are the ones who have to buy in. And this gets back to what I was saying earlier of, are you handing down the goals or letting them build them up?
Yeah, you're almost empowering
which
them.
requires listening to them and letting go of this, which is, again, back to what I said earlier. This is hard because they've been reinforced over time in a very intentionally good way to, I have to have the answer to everything. I know this is what I got to do. And they've got that mirror and window thing flipped around.
Right. No, I like it. Yeah, that's a powerful message.
I've probably gotten everyone really, really confused
No,
by this
all.
because we're talking about this very extemporaneously, but
no, it's all good. So just as we wrap things up here, Mike, I know that you're obviously going and help do coaching, but you've obviously recognized that there's a need for some type of an online course, and that's something I know you've been working hard on for the last year or so. Can you touch on that and just talk about why you felt as though there was a need to build that platform?
So, I'm not going to not appear super brilliant here. I had a little bit more time on my hands when COVID took off. So
right.
It's something I wanted to work on. But part of all of my coaching engagements usually is having someone do a little bit learning before I show up about what we're going to do. And I'm like, well, wouldn't it be nice if I had a series of classes that people could take and learn what they need to know, and then we're at a better starting point. And let's face it, a lot of CEOs and entrepreneurs are very much in that, I got to do it all myself. I don't need a coach. I just need to learn something. Okay, take the course and learn it. And if you need help, call me. Right. And if you don't need help, you're going to do okay. And if you want more help, or if you decide you don't want to do it yourself, then there's lots of help I can give you. So I've started a school called the School of Rock and Sand, and the foundation of it is the Rock and Sand model. And there's an overview class, and then here's a master class. If you follow these steps, 12 modules, and do this with your team, you'll come out with a pretty good strategic plan, a good roadmap for the future. And then I started going, well, what are all the other things that get in the way? So that's the thing, when you know this, you help someone create a strategic plan, then you start figuring out all the things that are getting in the way of executing the plan. And that becomes the next coaching thing. Yeah. Well, that means I need a course in how to understand our customers better, right? Which is, I'm calling it the buy and stay cycle. And there's a leadership course now, and that I'm halfway through creating. And I've created a Cash is King course.
Well, that's cool. That's awesome.
And I'm going to have about 4 or 5 core courses and a bunch of smaller ones that you can subscribe and take these, or take them individually and just learn what you need to know to be able to sort this out if you're a do-it-yourself. And that's who I'm targeting the classes for. There's a lot. I think one of the things I'm hoping to happen with this is a lot of the people we talked about earlier who don't want to admit that they don't know something because that requires them to be vulnerable. They could take this class and brush up and learn what they don't know. And then they can kind of admit, I didn't know that. Let's get some help. That's what I'm hoping to happen is,
that's awesome. No, I
that. I think that's going to happen, and it's happened a couple times already.
Right, that's awesome. No, I'm excited, and as the listeners will find out. I mean, they can now have a look at that link to your courses now on the Commercial Landscapers website, and if people wanted to get in touch with you, Mike, just to learn more about your coaching, your practices, your courses, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
So I think the easiest way is to go to my website, which is rockandsand.com, ROCKNSAND.com. And on just about every page on that website, there's schedule a meeting, push the button. There's my calendar. We'll talk.
Okay.
That's the easiest way to get time, is schedule your own thing. I'm not trying to lord over anything. It eliminates the phone tag.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the easiest way,
Yeah,
really.
use
I have a
technology.
phone number. If you want the phone number, I'll give you the phone number. If you want the email address, I can give you my email address. But I think that works best. And I love the surprise of seeing someone on my calendar that I don't know.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. Well, Michael, really appreciate your sharing your wisdom today. Thank you for sharing the challenges you face when you go in to see companies, what you quickly uncover within the first session or two with him. I appreciate your time today, Mike, and thank you for joining me.
No, thank you. And we got to make sure that if you swing a tennis racket, the next time we're together, we need to do that together.
Yeah, no, I used to play a lot, so it's been a while, but
well, you better dust that sucker off, and we're going to get the next time we're in the same city, we'll find some court time and hit. So
perfect.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this conversation and our friendship.
Yep, absolutely. Cool. Thank you, Mike. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care.
You too.
Hopefully that was pure dead brilliant for you today, and you got some great takeaways for your business or your personal life. This is Robert Clinkybeard along with David Anderson, and we'd love to get you and your friends to join us in our future journey. Two quick things before you go, listeners. Check out our website, commerciallandscapers.com. You can subscribe, you can share with your friends, but more importantly, check out our new sponsor, Site Recon. It's going to make your sales process, your estimating way easier, so you can spend more time in your proposals. Thanks everyone. Cheers. Bye.